everyone, and welcome back to Mr. Smitty's YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be continuing with Lab 4. So in class we started looking at arrays, and we started talking about how basically it's a container that has multiple blocks inside of it, and you can store a lot of different data points that are of the same type. So you can have an int array, double array, string array, boolean array, etc. So we're working through our lab. And we've come to a point now where we have reached problems number 5 and 6. But for problems 5 and 6, you also need to know the random class inside of Java. Alright, so the random class allows us to generate random numbers based off how we manipulate the actual random object. And I'm going to show you exactly how that works before we get into problems 5 and 6. So go ahead and jump on over. The first thing I've got pulled up today is the notes. So if you pull up your notes, you'll see that the very first thing is the random class. So very similar to how we had done the scanner and how we did decimal format, you're going to go through a process. So you're going to have to import random, create a random instance, so an instance of the object, and then we're actually going to use that to create and generate random numbers. So I'm going to go through an example first. So go ahead and navigate over to NetBeans and start a new project. I'm just going to call this random video. Why not? All right. So in the random video, I'm going to go ahead and take out all of the comments. That way I got room to work. All right. So like I said, this is very, very, very similar to how we do scanner and how we also do decimal format. So we're going to go through the process, and I'm going to walk through the notes as we do it. So step 1, import random. So we're going to go up here under package and do our import. So import java.util. And then you will see that there's one called random. Alright, it's grayed out for me because I haven't actually created a random instance yet. So I'm going to do that now, just like we do with our scanner and we did with decimal format. We're going to say static, then the name of it is random, and then we're going to give it a name. I'm just going to call it randgen. Alright, in the notes, that's how I refer to it also. So I'm going to give it the name randgen equals new random. Alright, so now we have created this random generator that we can use to make numbers. And I'm going to show you how it works. So if I come down into my main method, let's just say I have int random. Well, I can set that equal to randgen, which is the name of our random generator, dot next int. Alright, so just like when we use a scanner, we say keyboard, which is the name of the scanner, dot next int to scan in an integer and store it. Here we're saying randgen.nextInt to generate a random integer. So let's just see what got generated. So what I'm going to do is just print out the variable random. Alright, so what do y'all think? What got generated? 0 to 10, 1 to 50, I don't know, 2,000 to 3,000. Like what number got generated? Well, we're just going to run it. Negative big number. Negative big number. Positive big number. Okay. So it looks like it just generates a bunch of just random numbers, which is what we want, right? So what is actually going on is, if you remember back to the beginning of the year, we saw that different data types have different ranges. And an integer actually goes negative 2 billion to positive 2 billion. So what is happening here, because we're using dot next int, it is generating a number in this range. So between negative 2 billion 147 million to positive 2 billion 147 million. Alright, so it's generating a number between that range. Not very helpful for us, right? Let's say that we're trying to program a dice and we need 1 to 6. Alright, that's not very helpful trying to get numbers between negative 2 billion and positive 2 billion. So what we have to do is we have to do what's called manipulation of our random generator. All right, so we're actually going to give it a range. All right, and the way we do that is we put a number inside of the parentheses. So let me just show you. So if I go to my randgen.nextInt and I put a 10, so randgen.nextInt 10, when I run this, I now start getting numbers. Okay, I saw a 0 though. So 0, 4, 6, 8, 4, 7, 2. Okay, well, one thing I'm noticing is I'm never seeing 10. So what this is actually doing is it's giving me random numbers between 0 and 9. So if you put a 10 in there, random numbers from 0 to 9. So how do I make it from 1 to 10? Add a plus 1. All right, so whatever you put inside here will give you from 0 to that number. And then if you add a plus 1, it'll shift the range up 1. So this gives you random numbers from 1 to 10. All right, if I wanted to do random numbers from, let's say I wanted to make a dice. All right, I could say randgen.nextInt and say 6 plus 1. All right, so to show you that that works, let me just print that out. I'm going to just say dice plus dice. All right. So next to dice, I should see, okay, 5, 1, 2, 3, 6, 3, 3, 2, 1, 4. I don't think we saw a 5 yet. There's a 5. All right, so it gives me from 1 to 6. So in your notes, you will see that I have, if you go back to the random notes, I've given you a chart of just kind of some starter manipulations. Keep this in your mind. I would take a picture with my phone. That way, if I'm ever programming, I'm like, man, I remember Smitty told me there was a chart where I could remember. Oh, pull out your phone. It's right there. That's what I would do. So yeah. So let's. I think that's pretty good about random. The reason we started with talking about random is if you look at problems 5 and 6. Number 5 says create an array to store 5 random numbers between 1 and 10. And number 6, we need 5,000 decimal numbers. So, kind of need to know what random is in order to do these. All right, so let's go ahead and shift into the lab. So I am going to close my output. I am going to close that project. I am going to find my practicing arrays lab. And I am going to open it. All right, so far we have done problems 1 through 4. So I'm going to go ahead and comment out number 4 in the main method. And then I'm going to make calls to problem 5 and also add a, skip a line and then make a call to problem 6. I know we haven't made them yet, but we're about to make them right now. All right, so now I'm going to go up here and we're doing modularity. Remember, so we need a method for each one of these. So now I'm going to have a public static void problem 5. And then under that, public static void problem 6. All right, so we have 2 problems we're working on today. All right, so we're going to start with number 5. Just kind of check it out and work through it. So if you take a look at the lab, create an array to store 5 random numbers between 1 and 10 generated by the computer. All right, generated by the computer means use the random class that I just showed you. So let's start by creating an array to store 5 random numbers between 1 and 10. All right, so first thing I need to say to myself, 1, 2, 3, 4, what's that data type? Those are integers. So I'm going to have an int array. So I'm going to say int brackets random array. I think that's a good name, right? And new int of size 10, because we're going to go from, wait, oh no, it wants 5 random numbers. So our size is 5. All right, so there we go. We have a random array of type int storing 5. All right, so now we want to fill it with 5 random numbers. We want to fill the array with 5 random numbers. So if you look back at our other problems, every time we had to fill the array, we had to use a for loop. So we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to use a for loop. So for int I is equal to 0, I is less than the length of the array. We need to know how long the array is. So that's random array.length, I++, and that's our for loop. So inside the for loop, we now need to generate random numbers and store them in the array. So I think right now is probably the time that we make our random generator. So back to the notes. What was step 1? Import random. So we're going to go up top. Oh, look at this. Look at these imports we're starting to rack up. We got scanner decimal format. We're about to add up some random. All right, import java.util.random. All right, we got our import. Now we got to make it. Look at this. We got a scanner, a decimal formatter. Guess what? We're about to make a random object. So random rangen equals new random. All right, we got a random generator now. So we're going to come down. And now let's actually use it. So what we're doing is we want to generate a random number between 1 and 10 and then store it into the array. Generate a random number, store it into the array. All right, so to store it in the array, we say random array at I is equal to, and now we just need to use the random generator. So that is rangen dot next int. So that is going to make us an int. But if you remember to my example at the beginning, that's going to give us an int between that negative 2 billion and the positive 2 billion. So now we need to manipulate this to give us 1 to 10. So we put 10 inside the parentheses to make it go to 0 to 9. And then we do plus 1 to make it shift to 1 to 10. All right. So at this point, we now have to, what's the last thing we have to do in this lab? Print out the square of each of the numbers. Print out the square of each of the numbers. All right, so we're going to have to go through the array again. We're going to have to go through the array. So we're going to need to loop again. And we're going to print the square at each value. So we need another for loop. So int I, guys, it's all patterns, right? Same thing, random array.length, I++. All right, for loop. Okay, so now we need to print out the square. So really the square is try to decide how I want it to print. I guess we'll print each one on a line, or we could space them. So a square is random array at I, so that'll give us whatever is in that first spot. So whatever is stored in index 0 times whatever is stored at index 0. So we're printing array times array. Array at I times array at I. So if 6 is in spot 0, this would be 6 times 6, which is 36. Maybe before we do that, maybe right here we want to put a thing that says the squares of the array are. We'll do a print, not a print line. So then when it goes in our for loop, it'll start printing them, and then after each one, let's go ahead and put parentheses around this. So that way it'll do the calculation, and then after the calculation, it'll just put a space so we can see them separated. All right, so let's run this. Let's see what happens. So if I run problem, okay. So the squares of the array are 9, 64, 64, 9, and 9. So they actually, I used print line here, so that's why they keep going to their new line. So I'm going to change that to print. Now if I run it again, the squares are 16, 16, 25, 1, and 10. So if I think about this, this means that it generated 4, 4, 5, 1, and 10, right? I run it again. 9. So it generated a 9, a 5, a 6, a 2, and a 5, but then we're printing out the squares. All right, so we just want to make sure that we see all our numbers. So I've seen 1, I've seen 2, I see 9, so that's our 3. I see 16, that's our 4. 25 is our 5. 36 is our 6. 49 is our 7. 8 is 64. 9 is 81. There's 81, and we've seen 100. So we've got our 1 through 10, and we're printing out these squares. All right, so not too bad, you know. We're just adding a new concept every time we work through one of these. All right, so I hope that made sense. Let's move on to problem number 6. So for problem number 6, create an array to store 500 decimals. So right there, boom, light bulb, Smith, decimals. We're moving into doubles, man. We got to use some doubles here because we're, boom, decimals. All right, so create an array to store 500 decimal numbers. All right, so double because decimals, then brackets. I'm going to call it decimal array. That's a good name. Equals new double, and it wants 500. Wow, that's wild. 500 decimals. Oh my god, it wants 5,000. 5,000 decimals. Oh, it's wild. All right. So now we need to randomly generate numbers from 0, 1 to fill the array. So before we fill the array, let's see what our random gen does. So if I say double decimal number equals new or rangen dot next double, let's just see what that prints before we go filling an array with a bunch of these. All right. So if I print out decimal number, you know, basically what's going to happen here is it's going to generate a random double and store it into decimal number. But I don't know what the range of this double is. So I'm just checking here. All right, so I see that I also still have problem number 5 on. So I'm going to go comment that out real quick. All right, now I'm going to start hitting that run again. Okay, so it just automatically gives me numbers between 0 and 1, it looks like. So it looks like dot next double gives me numbers from 0 to 1, so this will be easy. All right, cool. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this part. And then we need to fill the array. So when we fill the array, again, we need a loop. So for int I equals 0, I less than decimal array dot length. So we need the length of the array, I plus plus. Oh, wha-bam. Look at us. I'm telling you, we're going to be incredible programmers before we're done with this. All right, so we now have a for loop to fill with decimal double values. So to do that, we say decimal array at I is then equal to our random gen dot next double, like that. So it's going to generate that, you know, we saw that it generates decimals between 0 and 1. We saw that. So it's going to generate that, store it in 5,000 times. We're going to have 5,000 of these bad boys. That's so cool. All right. So now randomly generate. We did that. Now we need to calculate and print the mean. So that means we're going to have to loop back through the entire array and add up all those decimals and print it. So we need another loop. It's less than decimal dot length I plus plus. All right, so we're going to loop back through, but this time we're going to have a variable. So I'm going to go up here and make a new variable called mean. And then inside of here, the mean will be plus equals whatever the value at decimal array is. So whatever the value at decimal array at I is, that'll be mean. Okay, so it's mad because I didn't set mean equals. So when we start our program, we're going to make mean equal to 0. All right, so looping through, then we're adding up every decimal in the array. So we're saying mean plus equals decimal array at I. And then the very last thing, let's print out the mean. So outside of the for loop, let's say mean is equal to mean. So now when we run this, so we're ready to run problem 6 already. This was not too bad. All right, so when we add up 5,000 decimals, it gives us, I mean, it looks like it gives us somewhere between like 2,450 and 2,550. So I'm thinking to myself, does that make sense, right? So if we randomly generated decimals, like it's going to be like point 0.1, point 0.2, point 0.3, point 0.4, point 0.5, point 0.6, point 0.7, point 0.8, point 0.9. So as we start adding those, they're going to converge towards a number. So if we added up 5,000 times, we'd get 5,000. But because we're doing decimals, it like converges towards that 0.5. So because we're around half of 5,000, I'm pretty sure this works. Makes sense to me. I don't know. I'm not a mathematician. I'm a programmer, but it makes sense. Um, okay, so that is how we would handle problem number 6. So guys, that pretty much wraps up this video. Again, I introduced the random class to you. Then we looked at our lab and I worked through problems 5 and 6 just to kind of give you a heads up of where we're going. My next video is going to be about problem 7, which kind of ties all this together. We're going to start tying it all together and doing a little bit harder problems, a little bit harder array problems. Um, but yeah, we're just going to keep moving forward and keep grinding. So I hope this video was very, very helpful to you. I'm just going to keep making videos about arrays, and we're going to keep practicing until we can do this without having to think about it. So I appreciate you watching. I will see you next time. I would really appreciate it if you could drop in and drop follows to all my socials. Of course, you have Instagram, Mr. Smitty RCA. YouTube is Mr. Smitty, and also my Twitter is Smitty Mister. All right, guys, I appreciate it, and thanks so much.